Hello everyone, my name is Karthik. I am a PhD student in the Department of ECE and this is joint work with my advisor, Professor Rajesh Sundaresan. And the problem that I'll be talking about today is one of odd arm identification, also called anomaly detection in a multi-arm bandit. And I'm going to speak about this problem in the context of Markov observations from each arm. So here is a first motivating example for my problem. So what you see is an online post that brought to light a malicious ad that was tricking the users into falling for tech support when it actually says that it's directing us to Amazon.com. Well, there may be many such malicious ads out there, and it is definitely of interest to identify the malicious ads as quickly as possible. As a second example, consider a power grid in which there are various power elements, and let's say these power elements are connected via lines. Now, let's say for some reason one of the lines happens to be faulty. It's an outage, and this may be detrimental to the performance of the entire system. And in this interest, it may be of help, it may be necessary to identify the line in outage as quickly as possible. As a third motivating example, consider a visual neuroscience experiment in which you are a participant, and let's say you are shown a number of images like this at once, and your goal is to identify the odd image as quickly and accurately as possible. Of course, this experiment can be repeated with different sets of images to understand how the time to identify the odd image itself looks like as a function of the various images that are shown. Finally, as a last motivating example, let's consider the case when the static images like the ones shown here are replaced with movies. So what you see here are 8 patches of drifting dots movies. The dots in each of these patches or movies is executing a Brownian motion with a fixed drift. The drift in one of these patches is different from the common drift of all the other patches. And the goal is to identify the patch with the odd drift, with the different drift as quickly and accurately as possible. So in all of these problems, it is clear that there is a common underlying thread, which is that of an anomaly or odd behavior in the system. And typically in problems involving identifying such anomalies, there are two quantities of interest. One is the time to identify the anomaly, and other is the error or the accuracy with which we report the anomaly. Of course, we would like to keep both of these as small as possible, but in order to carry out a systematic analysis of the anomaly detection problem, it turns out that typically one of these quantities is kept fixed and the other is studied as a function of how the quantity that is kept fixed varies. So in this work, we are going to fix error and we are going to ask ourselves how the time to identify the anomaly looks like as a function of error. Of course, it is intuitive to expect that smaller the error, smaller the room that we are provided for making error, for reporting the anomaly incorrectly, perhaps longer we will have to wait before we are actually sure of the anomaly that we have identified. So therefore, the question at the end of the day is how does the time to identify the anomaly grow as a function of error? Now, a study of the prior works shows that this growth rate is of the order of logarithm of 1 over the error times a constant 1 over d star, where d star is something that depends on the underlying problem and it tries to capture the hardness of the underlying problem. Now, this growth rate is only approximate and is exact only in the asymptotic limit as the error vanishes. So for the rest of this talk, we will be interested only in the asymptotics as error vanishes. Now, before we proceed with the presentation, I would like to draw a parallel between the examples we saw earlier and the topic of multi-arm bandits. So for those of you who are familiar with multi-arm bandits, you can think of each arm as analogous to an image, to a line in the power grid, or to a movie, or to an ad. And as usual, each arm is just a sequence of observations over time which follow a certain law. Now, the observations from arm 1 could possibly follow a law, let's say nu1. The observations from arm 2 could follow a law nu2, and so on. And let's say there are k such arms, and we therefore have k laws nu1 to nu_k. Now, this is the general setup of a multi-arm bandit, but in our problem, we impose additional structure. We do not have k such laws. We have only 2 laws, nu1 and nu2. One of the arms, which we call the odd arm, follows a law nu1, and all the other arms follow a law nu2. Now, there is a decision maker who is interested in finding out the odd arm as quickly as possible. And in order to do so, he is allowed to sample only one of the arms at any given time and collect the observation from that arm. Now, typically in multi-arm bandits, there is also this additional notion of a reward that the decision maker accumulates upon observing any particular arm and collecting the observation from that arm. But in our case, we are not interested in rewards. We do not speak about rewards because our problem is not about maximizing rewards, not about accumulating a lot of rewards over time. Our objective is to identify the anomaly, to identify the odd arm as quickly as possible. So in the prior works, it turns out that this problem of identifying the odd arm has been studied in the case when each arm gives IID observations. That is, the sequence of observations from each arm constitute an IID process. In this work, we actually extend the results to the case when each arm gives Markov observations. Now, why Markov? If we simply think about the odd movie identification example, in that case, if you recall, the dots in each of the patches executed Brownian motion with a fixed drift. Now, because the dots are moving at a certain angle, the positions of dots in any successive frames of a particular movie depend on each other. And this dependence between successive frames can be captured in the multi-arm banded setting by saying that successive observations from any given arm constitute a Markov process. That's the motivation for Markov, and it looks like this is more relevant in practice. Now, it turns out in the Markov case, one can study the problem in two settings. One is called the setting of rested arms, and the other is the setting of restless arms. The setting of rested arms simply means that the local clock of each arm is going to tick only when the arm is sampled. In other words, the Markov state evolutions on each arm will happen only when the arm is selected, when the arm is observed, and when an arm is not observed, state evolutions are frozen. This is in contrast to the setting of restless arms, where the state evolutions happen irrespective of whether or not the arm is observed. This seems to be more practical, thinking about the odd movie identification example from before, and this also happens to be more difficult to analyze. And therefore, in order to come to the analysis of the restless case, we first identify the rested case. We borrow a certain key takeaway ideas by studying the rested case, and then we apply these ideas to the analysis of the restless case. So again, let's remind ourselves that we are interested in identifying the growth rate of the time to identify the anomaly as a function of error. And if the IID process from prior works is replaced with Markov process, does this growth rate, does this scaling still hold is the question, the first obvious question that we could possibly ask. And it turns out that the answer is yes. And we can explicitly characterize this D star. So this is the organization of the thesis. So we study the rested and the restless case in the settings when the transition probability matrices P1 and P2 for the odd arm Markov process and the non-odd arm Markov processes are either known or not known. And the typical template for analysis is that we first identify an asymptotic lower bound on the time to identify the anomaly as a function of error. And this typically involves a smart application of a data processing inequality. And then we see whether this bound can be met. And this is where we try to design policies that help us in meeting the lower bound. And this is what constitutes the asymptotic upper bound. So there are two aspects to it, the asymptotic lower bound and the asymptotic upper bound. So here are a few key ideas and challenges. When the arms are rested and when P1 and P2 are known, it turns out that the constant D star can be expressed as a solution to a sup-min optimization problem. And really the way one should think of this is that nature has fixed a certain odd arm location H. We do not know about that. The decision maker doesn't know about that a priori. Now the min over all H prime not equal to H simply represents the fact that there are other alternative hypotheses, the true hypothesis being odd arm location H. There are various other alternative hypotheses which are trying to confuse the decision maker into believing that they are the true hypothesis when they are actually not. And therefore, it is the goal of the decision maker to sample the arms in such a way that this nearest alternative hypotheses are kept as far away as possible. So lambda here simply denotes a probability distribution on the arms according to which the decision maker is going to sample the arms at each time. Now, because we do not know what the odd arm location H is, we also do not know what the supremizing lambda H star is. So we maintain a list of lambda H stars. We estimate the H at each time. We maintain an estimate of H and we sample according to the lambda star that is optimal when H hat is the actual odd arm. And in fact, the way we do this is we mix lambda H star distribution with a uniform distribution. This is what is called the notion of trembling hand, and it is typically observed in practice. For example, in visual neuroscience experiments, that the decision maker or the participant in the experiment typically samples according to a distribution which follows the trembling hand model shown here. So eta is a fictitious parameter that is introduced into the system. And then the hope is that our guess of the odd arm matches with the true odd arm in the limit as t goes to infinity, as in when we collect more and more observations. And so the lambda H hat star will converge to lambda H star. And therefore, this will help us in getting to the lower bound D star. So when P1 and P2 are unknown, there is a similar idea, which is that the lambda star now, the supremizing lambda star depends on H, P1 and P2. And then we try to work with the distribution lambda star, which is optimal for the estimates that we maintain of the true parameters. This is a very, very important idea, which is called the principle of certainty equivalence. And then the hope is that as these parameters, as these estimates converge to the true values, if somehow we are able to show that the lambda stars are continuous as a function of the parameters, unknown parameters, then eventually we will get to lambda star of HP1, P2. And in establishing such a continuity result is where we make use of some maximum theorems from the literature. Now, finally, coming to the restless setting, it turns out that here the supremizing objects are more complicated. The supremum is over all conditional probability distributions on the arms, conditioned on how far back in time we observe each arm and what is the last observed state of each arm. Now, recall that in the restless setting, each arm continues to evolve, continues to undergo state evolution, whether or not we observe it. And therefore, it is very important for us to keep track of the extent to which we are losing state evolution. We are losing sight of state evolution on each arm. And all of this enters into the picture. It turns out that there is a very nice MDP formulation that comes out of the loss of information that we are accumulating over time. And then this MDP viewpoint is something that we introduce in our work. This has not appeared in the prior works. And the trembling hand model that I showed you earlier actually ensures a certain ergodicity property in the context of MDPs. So we do not yet have a clear understanding of whether this supremum can be attained, but what we do know is that this supremum, because it's a supremum, can be approached arbitrarily closely, and by stitching together the solutions, various solutions, we can approach the lower bound. So there are some future directions. What would happen when the state space of each Markov process is general? What we consider in our work is only a finite state space. What happens when there is more than one odd arm? What happens when the number of arms tends to infinity? What happens when time is continuous rather than discrete? So here are a few publications and some community members who are actively working on this area, on very closely related topics to this problem. And here are a few acknowledgements. Thank you.